Now, I've seen better Liverpool performances than the one that beat Girona 1-0 this evening in the Champions League. But sometimes you have to ask, does that really matter when the big picture looks as bright as it does? And the big picture for Liverpool is that they've now won 6 out of 6 Champions League games in this campaign so far. And they're essentially already through to the last 16 with 2 games to spare. Now, I say essentially because mathematically it's not quite confirmed yet. Maybe that could actually happen later this evening in the later fixtures, depending on how they turn out. But in all the simulations they ran prior to this season starting, 16 points was enough to get you through in the top 8 in 98% of the simulations they ran. So you would say that 18 points is certainly going to get Liverpool through in that top 8. And of course, that is massively important for a couple of reasons. The first is, of course, that they miss out on that playoffs that they would have had to be involved in if they'd finished lower than 8th. And of course, that would have been a 2-legged tie they've had to fit in February, and 2 games that would have an awful lot riding on them. So they've avoided that, which is fantastic. But also, it means these last 2 group games they've got left that both come in January against Lille at Anfield and then PSV away from home, they are essentially meaningless for Liverpool. I mean, you could argue that, to finish higher in the top 8 gives you a better seeding, but for me, there's an element of randomness there, really, that means that the seeding probably isn't going to massively matter. It's kind of similar to when you would finish first in your Champions League group and hope that would get you a better draw, but then an amazing team finished second in their group somehow and you end up playing them anyway. So I don't think that's massively important. And for me, it takes a lot of pressure off those remaining 2 Champions League games because Liverpool don't need them to get through in the top 8. And the seeding's not hugely important. So if there's a necessity to kind of make changes around them and it gets a bit busy, the schedule, then obviously the manager can take that opportunity and do them. So that is huge, really. And that's why today's game was so important for Liverpool in the end. And I think it justified the strong selection that he went with off the back of obviously having the opportunity to do so with the Everton game being called off. But I still think it showed it was a tough game and one that was worth having your best team out because obviously it was a tough game and also because the rewards were so good. And as I say, the bigger picture in the Champions League for Liverpool now looking very, very bright. 18 points, 6 wins, and they have in fact, as a finishing point on this, conceded just 1 goal in the 6 games, which actually came in the 3rd minute of the very first game away to AC Milan when Christian Pulisic scored. That feels like a long, long time ago, doesn't it? But it just shows you how good they've been in this group stage so far and deservedly put themselves in a position where they are, as I say, essentially already through. Now, I want to dig into the performance a little bit deeper, and you have to say it was a bit of a sticky one, wasn't it? I would say about Girona that they were impressive in this game, specifically in the defensive aspect, really. For them, obviously, it's a huge game, isn't it? A team like Liverpool coming to town. Obviously, they played games against Real Madrid and Barcelona there, but never faced Liverpool in a big Champions League tie. So it was a big one for them, bringing a team like that to kind of a smallish stadium. The atmosphere was very good and made it difficult for Liverpool. And Girona just defended for their lives throughout the game. And when you come up against that is really, really difficult, isn't it, to break down at times. You've got a side that's full of quality, certainly Champions League quality, that is working hard for each other, and they were in a very, very low block, and Liverpool struggled really to kind of break that down. And I mean, the statistics kind of bear that out, really. They have 15 shots, and 7 of those are on target, Liverpool, but they only generate 0.89 open play expected goals, which just shows you that Girona were getting bodies in front. They were making it really hard to get good, clean shots off. And so when Liverpool were getting shots off, it wasn't really amounting to much in expected goals. But, of course, they get that breakthrough, don't they, with the penalty. And I do have to say on the penalty, I think that was kind of a bit of a stroke of luck, really. I mean, you watch it back, it kind of is a penalty. He takes his boot off. But it's one of those where I think Van der Beek is kind of unlucky with the way it falls. He's not trying to bring him down. And it's on the soft side of penalties. If it's given against you, you're probably a little bit gutted. But I think what I loved about Liverpool from that point on, obviously Salah brilliant to put the penalty away, as he always is. But what I loved about that second half in general, actually, was just the amount of control that Liverpool exerted on it. And this, for me, was the real upside of this performance, really. It was the way that, particularly after they'd gone 1-0 up, they just completely choked the life out of the game and choked the life out of a Girona side who troubled them a little bit in the first half. I mean, after the 49th minute of this game, Girona only have 2 shots and they amount to 0.03 expected goals and 0.07 expected goals. So a team that was, for the majority of that period, chasing the game, had the opportunity to push and open up a little bit and tried to put pressure on Liverpool, they just couldn't do it. Liverpool just looked so in control. They looked like they had it easy. Girona weren't generating any shooting opportunities, not even good shooting opportunities. He just couldn't get shots off, as I say, and just those 2 shots after the 49th minute. So it just shows you how much Liverpool controlled that game. And I think, as I say, not a vintage performance by any means, but I think that's one thing you can take as a real positive. And in fact, that control, I find that particularly reassuring after the Newcastle game in particular, where, you know, that was away from home in a difficult atmosphere. It ended up 3-3, of course, and at times just looked like Liverpool struggled to control it. But in the second half here, real control of the game, had a real chokehold on it, and just strangled the life out of Girona, really, after going 1-0 up, which, you know, if you can get a maybe fortunate penalty and capitalise it on it in that way, then that for me is a sign of a very, very good team. So I really enjoyed that aspect of the performance. I think one thing they will look at, they maybe won't be happy with, is, as I say, is 15 shots and only 0.89 expected goals. They will want to do a little bit more in attack, even against a good side who are defending for their lives. And, you know, you think that it's Fulham coming up at the weekend, a side who really restricted what Arsenal were able to create against them in the last weekend of Premier League fixtures. So that's a tricky one, in a team that's going to be as defensive, and Liverpool will want to be sharper and better in unpicking that lock. But of course, they took a lot of pressure off themselves in this game by completely just shutting down the game after they'd scored the penalty. So for me, that was a real positive. Now, I'm going to reflect on a few individual performances as well, and I want to talk about the man who came back in to start in goal today, Alisson Becker. And of course, I've had a bit of maybe a bit of feedback on the channel at times saying that I'm being overly harsh on Quiveen Kelleher recently, and maybe criticising him. I want to say I absolutely am not. I didn't want to criticise him. Obviously, he made that mistake against Newcastle, but for me, he's been absolutely phenomenal when he's come in for Liverpool in this period. Alisson has been in. But the point I always want to make when Kelleher's been there, and I've seen a few comments suggesting, you know, maybe he'd have to battle for his place back, Alisson, but I just don't think that's right. I think Alisson, and we too easily forget, for me is the best goalkeeper in the world, and I thought he had a really good chance to show that tonight. A good reminder, really, of just how good he is and the class he operates with, particularly in that first half when Girona had the best of their opportunities. I mean, over the 90 minutes, he makes 5 saves, denies 0.54 expected goals on target, he keeps out. He also completes 25 out of 29 passes and looks so calm and in control with the ball at his feet in the way that we've seen Kelleher do. But he also has that, and he's also, you know, a bit bigger than Kelleher. He's a bit better at the kind of point blank saves. He's just all-round class, really, in everything he does in his goalkeeping, and I thought we really saw that today. So, you know, he hasn't been a big miss because Kelleher has been outstanding in his stead, but it is good to have a player of that quality back, and you know, I think it's a boost to Liverpool to have him back. He just makes the team just that even little bit better because he's just that good of a goalkeeper, really. So really good to see him back in and get that 90 minutes, and I'm sure he will now keep hold of the shirt going forward. And a couple of other individual performances I want to mention. I thought Ryan Gravenberch was very good again today. It just did things that were very important to Liverpool in this game. Nothing necessarily flashy, although we did see a couple of nice turns from him. But what Liverpool needed in this game was someone who was going to win individual battles and someone who's going to keep the ball. And Ryan Gravenberch just absolutely did that. 5 out of 11 duels won, 5 recoveries, and a 95% pass completion. Now, that 95% pass completion when Girona were pressing hard, they were trying to force turnovers if they could, but Liverpool needed that control. They needed to keep the ball. They didn't want to be risky, particularly after going 1-0 up, and I thought Gravenberch brought that real control to them. And of course, I think Newcastle, one of the reasons he struggled, really, that he just looked a little bit leggy in that game for me, which is no surprise given how much football he's played, but he looked back to his best today. That rest on Saturday's clearly done him good. Obviously, he'll be in the team on Saturday, and I think he'll probably get another rest against Southampton as well. So I think, you know, it's good to see him looking back to his best, and I thought a big part of how Liverpool controlled that second half of the game, Gravenberch had a big hand in that. There's just one more performance I want to talk about, and it's a little bit of a negative one again, unfortunately. I didn't go into Núñez too deeply after the Newcastle game because sometimes, you know, I feel like we can be a little bit harsh on him and he gets too much of the spotlight when things don't go right. But to me, I think it was clear today that Núñez isn't in the best form, is he? And I think he brought that Newcastle performance, which wasn't his best, into this game as well, really. 4 out of 8 passes completed, 2 big chances missed, 1 out of 4 duels won. They are not good numbers for someone who's playing up front for Liverpool. And the thing is with me and Darwin Núñez, I'm kind of relaxed about his contributions over the remainder of this season, because for me, I've kind of settled into the idea that he probably isn't ever now, we can probably say now 2.5 seasons into his Liverpool career, he probably isn't ever going to be that starting centre forward for Liverpool. He probably just doesn't have that quality or consistency, certainly, if not quality. It's the consistency of showing that quality. He doesn't maybe have that, and he's not going to be able to show that at Liverpool. But I think what he can be is a very, very good second choice and a good option off the bench to maybe create some chaos or get a late goal. And I think we've seen enough signs that he can be that over the remainder of the season. At the end of the day, look, Jota's coming back soon, so he will be the starter centre forward. I think Chiesa, we might see a little bit of him in that role. Diaz can obviously operate there. So we're not going to have to see an awful lot of Núñez over the remainder of the season. But I think, as I say, it was a poor performance over the last couple of games. But in the games prior to that, he'd not been getting many shots, not been getting many goals this season. But what he had been doing is keeping the ball, getting it up the pitch, pressing really well. And for a second choice striker, if you can come in and do that over, sporadically over the remainder of the season, that could be enough to get Liverpool to top honours. If you were asking him to start every week, it might be a bit of a problem for Liverpool, but I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think Slot wants him as his starting centre forward. I think he clearly favours Jota. I think, as I say, Chiesa and Diaz maybe even favoured in that position over him. So he just has to be that second choice centre forward that can come in off the bench sometimes, can start the odd game maybe in the League Cup or whatever, and just keep the ball for Liverpool. You don't have to be a goal machine. That's absolutely fine. And then they can make the decision on his future at the end of the season, which I imagine will possibly be towards him maybe leaving the club. But as I say, it's probably not worth panicking about his performances at the moment. You've just got to kind of accept what he is, and he does lack that consistency, and he can have poor games like today. But if Jota can stay fit between now and the end of the season, fingers crossed he can, and doesn't get landed on again, then I still think Núñez is good enough to just play that second fiddle and maybe chip in with a few goals and assists, because that's the role I think that Liverpool need him to play this season. And as I say, then it comes to the end of the season and you decide what that means for the rest of his Liverpool career. But I think, my main point really is to kind of be relaxed about what he contributes, because I don't think Liverpool are going to desperately need him over the games that are coming up if Jota can stay fit, which we really hope he can. So I'm going to wrap it up there anyway. Do let me know what you thought of the performances, individually, collectively. How pleased have you been with this Champions League campaign so far? There's probably no arguing with the results, is there? They've been absolutely fantastic. Liverpool flying at the moment. And how are you feeling now after getting that Newcastle result and that disappointing to throw it away late? Get that out the system, getting a win, back into winning ways, bouncing into that Fulham fixture. You feeling confident ahead of that one? Do let me know in the comments, and if you can like and subscribe, always appreciated. Going through insane growth on the channel at the moment, by the way, so thank you so much to everyone who's watching. I massively appreciate it. And of course, it's build up to Fulham next, and I'll be at Anfield this weekend to cover that game, so I'll see you guys very, very soon.